Hey guys, Angie Atkinson with queenbeing.com. Today, Queen Being, I'm going to answer a question for a viewer, and you can see his name right here on my screen. His name is August Greenwell. Okay, and he specifically wants to know, could you please explain? Wait, let me just show you his profile. Here he is. La la la, there he goes. Okay. He says, could you please explain a bit more about the effect of kid issues and how they relate to one becoming narc-bait? And could birth order play a component? Thanks ahead of time, August. As far as birth order goes, let me just say this before I get started. Birth order, could it play a significant component? Maybe, but I think the biggest thing to consider is how the parent treated each child when there are more than one. When one child is the golden child, and the other child is the victim child, then obviously the victim child is going to be far less likely to heal and be okay, whereas the golden child may turn out to be either a narcissist or a very angry person. All right. Anyway, Mr. Greenwell was commenting on this video of mine, which is called "Are You Narc Bait? 3 Big Reasons You Attract Narcissists." All right. So let's get started. So you already know that being in a relationship with a narcissist or someone with NPD means that you get treated like you're not quite as much of a person as your partner, right? Of course, the same goes for their children and literally everyone else in their lives on varying levels. But, it's like they think we're not quite as real or as important as they are. It's very interesting. So I've got good news for you and I've got bad news for you. But you know me, I like to start with the good news. The good news is it's not you, it's really the narcissist. It's not your kids, it's really the narcissist. In fact, it's an extremely common red flag symptom of NPD. And it's one that many victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and gaslighting in relationships report. They feel like they don't matter. They feel like the narcissist made it clear to them from the very beginning that they just aren't actually important. So while Mr. Greenwell has been lucky enough to have already left his narcissistic relationship, and I know this because I've read other comments from him, I realize that not everyone has, and I'm making this video in response to Mr. Greenwell, but of course for everyone else as well who needs it. So if you are struggling with this kind of abuse right now, you probably get what I mean. And I'm sure Mr. Greenwell does as well. That feeling of always feeling like you're sort of faking it, like you don't even really believe yourself when you're talking. Oof, I've been there. Quick sidebar though, that's a form of dissociation, and it's a common symptom of PTSD and CPTSD. And those are both obviously unfortunate, but all too often side effects of narcissistic abuse. So, yeah. Anyway, dissociation is a disconnection from your physical surroundings. It's when you sort of feel like you're watching the world from somewhere deep inside your head or above it or somehow otherwise disconnected from it. Like it's a bubble, like you're watching, you're not really there. You're watching life through a movie, like a sort of fog around you, like people can't really quite reach you in real life. Of course, the worst part about narcissists is that they treat people like possessions, and that obviously there are no limits to their levels to which they will stoop. I can't believe the amount of horror stories I hear from people. I was just talking with a woman recently who I can't even begin to tell you all the details of her story, but it's horrible what she's been put through. It's just some narcissists go so extreme that they make the rest of them look like kittens and puppies. Okay, but hopefully you're not with one of those. Anyway, the worst part, like I said, it's that they have no limits, and they don't care who they hurt, okay? And the most toxic narcissists, of course, are even willing to go so far as hurting their own children, using them as pawns in their gaslighting games, and even completely ignoring their existence as long as it suits their purposes. But of course, always showing them off in public when they're excited about stuff or when they want to look like the perfect parent or whatever. So let me present to you a real life example of a narcissist father who uses his 2 daughters and their mother as pawns in his manipulative gaslighting games, okay? I call it the narcissist sperm donor, a tale of 2 babies. It is a true story. I have changed the names to protect the innocent involved. There is, so this is the story of two little girls. We're going to call them Sally and we'll call them with the other one Callie. They're half sisters, these two, and they're only a month or two apart. Their father, let's call him Jack. He cheated on Sally's mother. Let's call her Sue. With Callie's mother, who we're going to call Anne today. And so Sally's mother and Callie's mother. Sue is Sally's mother. Sue is the one who the narcissist cheated on with Anne. Okay? According to Jack, the father, he and Sue were quote unquote on a break, when Callie was conceived. All Anne knows is that she got pregnant thanks to an encounter with Jack and that she gave birth to Callie as a result of it. Now, this gets very interesting because days after Sally was born, Sue catches wind of Anne's pregnancy and imminent due date. She confronts Jack, and of course, he denies it, and somehow he convinces Anne, the other baby's mother, to lie about it if Sally confronts her directly. Eventually, Callie is born and looks very much like her half sister Sally. And everyone begins to suspect that Anne's daughter is really Jack's love child. When Jack is finally confronted about this in public, he gets angry and loses control. He thinks everyone has turned against him and he watches in horror as his elaborately built house of lies tumbles down around him in horror. Horror he's watching. As the truth about his ridiculous behavior spills forth into his circle of friends and family. Suddenly, people are starting to see him for maybe who he really is. Everyone finds out that Callie exists and is shocked at the resemblance she bears to Sally. Not only that, everyone learns that Jack has never even so much as met the day's younger daughter, and has no intention of doing so. Again, the worst part. In fact, Jack the narcissist says it's due to stress and negativity in his current relationship, or lack thereof, the one he was with Anne, who really wasn't a relationship, but in reality, it's because Callie doesn't serve a need in his life and at this moment. He, the narcissist, feels completely justified in his discarding of his own flesh and blood because of the negativity in his relationship with her mother, completely disregarding the fact that his daughter is not a possession but an actual human being who needs actual things and has a real live personal soul inside of herself. Okay, she's not just some pawn. In the meantime, as his relationship with Sue inevitably erodes in light of this information, Jack can't help but implode as she understandably recoils and pulls away on a very emotional level. Even as she tries to protect herself from his gaslighting and manipulation, he tries again and again to use their daughter Sally against her. So, just as he's completely denying the existence of one daughter, this narcissist using the other daughter as an attempt to manipulate the woman he wants to possess and call his own, who at that moment is Sue. As the situation grows in intensity, Jack starts desperately seeking a flying monkey. He calls and he texts everyone he knows, trying to figure out, who's on his side, who's really his friend. And of course, which ones might sleep with him, to take his mind off the stress that evil Sue caused, Sally's mom. And speaking of Sue, she's all he can talk about. How horrible she's been to him and how she's keeping his daughter from him. Meanwhile, Sue's looking for a new babysitter because Jack said he won't take care of the baby anymore while Sue's at work. Just another attempt to control her, of course. All of this is Jack's desperate attempt to retain control of what he wants. The women and the children in his life are pawns and nothing more. They are treated like possessions and less like people. So let me ask you really quick before we continue. Does that sound like anyone you know? Please tell me about your experiences and what you think about this story in the comments. All right? So let's talk about what all narcissists have in common. We all know how eerily familiar we find the stories of other narcissistic abuse survivors, right? Well, that's because all narcissists have certain, moves, and that's why we classify them as narcissists in the first place. So we have to figure out how we're going to handle that, right? But of course, there are a lot of different types of narcissists, but there are 4 basic traits that literally every narcissist has in common, according to a 2013 study published by some people whose names I have trouble pronouncing. Anyway, so in that narcissism focused study, the researchers were able to define the following traits that I'm going to share with you now as being shared among all narcissists, despite various other definitions and forms of this particular personality disorder. It didn't matter if they were a covert narcissist or an overt one, or one of the other many types that we've currently defined. And you can see that in another video on my channel or at queenbeing.com. All right, 4 standard qualities shared by all narcissists. Number one, well, let's start here. The qualities that are shared by narcissists will include the following. Number one, selfishness. Number two, disregarding other people. Number three, being self-centered. And number four, lack of empathy. So I find that rather interesting. What would you add to that list, and what would you disagree with, if any? Let's discuss that. So go ahead and comment on that below as well. All right, if you want. So now, what makes a person become a narcissist? I think this is an important piece of this puzzle. So there are a few different ways, and knowing this stuff can just help you understand better what you're dealing with, and that always can lead to a better life for you. I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming video as well. Anyway, so there's no single known cause for narcissistic personality disorder, but there are several factors that may be associated with the development of this recognized disorder, according to my research. Okay, number one, it's all about loss in some way or another, sort of, right? So whether it's the loss of a normal experience or it's the loss of the ability to become self-sufficient in one way or another, it's about loss. So, for example, researchers say the following circumstances can cause or increase the chances of narcissistic personality disorder developing during a person's lifetime. The first one being severe emotional abuse in childhood. Next, unpredictable or negligible neglect by caregivers in childhood. And next, excessive pampering or praise in childhood. And next, excessive criticism for poor behaviors in childhood. See how that kind of goes like this? An oversensitive temperament at birth. Genetic abnormalities impacting psychobiology, the connection between the brain and behavior. Okay, so obviously what we have developed here is mommy's little narcissist or daddy's little narcissist, whatever the case may be, but let's get into that a little more. Another recent study found that many parents are too soft on their kids these days, offering too much praise and not enough criticism, according to CNN's Ruben Navarrete. This, according to the researchers, can apparently lead to narcissism. So I think there's definitely a certain amount of validity to the theory, but in my experience, there's more of a prominent group of narcissists who grew up thinking they weren't good enough for whatever reason. Anyway, the researchers listed traits and experiences that contribute to narcissism, including public schools that tolerate mediocrity, including a nurturing culture where everyone gets a trophy, social media, big deal, I know, where everyone with an opinion can share it. Here I am having an opinion and sharing it. Social media, thank you. Anyway, you know, a celebrity or reality show that tells Americans that anyone can be famous. At the top of the list, though, parenting. Navarrete says that, so what is the antidote to this epidemic of narcissism? In a word, he says it's balance. So you can praise your kids, but always make sure what you're praising them about is an actual achievement or accomplishment. Don't just cheer them on for participating. They're going to get enough of that along with a handful of ribbons from playing school sports, if they do. And on the other side of that coin, of course, don't be afraid to set high expectations. That demand that they be met and offer constructive criticism when necessary. And of course, remind your children that contrary to what they may be hearing from marketers and the rest of society, the world does not revolve around them. You can tell them that your world does if you want to, but the whole world won't, and you have to let them know that. You need to encourage them to think of the collective good and not just focus on themselves as individuals. So remind them that just as important as how they feel about themselves is how other people feel about them. This is something narcissists don't seem to get. And as often as possible, you need to stress to them that while they shouldn't let anyone look down on them, they also have a duty to do the same, not to look down on other people. So you can skip the part about where you tell them they're special, apparently. Rest assured, across town, another parent is telling her her child the exact same thing. So how special could either of them really be? Now, look, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of that particular researcher. Personally, I think you have to tell your children they're special. You have to tell them they matter and that their opinions are real and valid. That's just me. I don't think that being genuinely in love with your children on a healthy level can be bad for anyone. Your children need to know that when they come home, someone always loves them. They need unconditional love. And if you have been parented by a narcissist, you know that conditional love is so painful for children. Someone in their life has to offer them unconditional love. It's just that balance factor. You've got to have the unconditional love balancing out with who and what you know your child needs to be, balancing with discipline. Love and discipline, they can go hand in hand. That's all I'm saying. All right. Anyway, so now it's your turn. So I want you to tell me what other kid issues you want to know about when it comes to narcissists and how they affect your children, how they affect their own children. And I want you to share with me any other thoughts and experiences you have either on co-parenting with a narcissist or actually being the adult child of a narcissist. Maybe it'll help you make one other survivor's day, a life, world a little easier today, knowing that they're not alone. It just always helps. All right. Or maybe you'll offer some tip that can just change their life. I would appreciate any comments and thoughts you can share with me today. And always, as always, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe if you haven't already. And let's talk. All right. So before I close up, my name is Angela Atkinson. I'm a certified life coach. I'm an author and I'm a survivor. You can learn more about narcissism and narcissistic abuse recovery at queenbeing.com. There are tons of free resources there for survivors and victims of narcissistic abuse in relationships. Also, booksangiewrote.com. I've written several books on this very topic as well as related topics. And finally, narcissismsupportcoach.com, which is where you can pick up my free 5-day email course as well as get signed up with me for personalized narcissistic abuse recovery coaching. All right. Thanks and have a great week.